I've sat across from men who haven't touched themselves in years, not out of shame, but out of silence. One stopped after his wife passed. Another just thought his body didn't care anymore. But the decline that followed wasn't random. Their circulation slowed, their mood dulled, their sleep fractured. I'm Dr. Nolan, and if you're over 60, what we're about to talk about might surprise you. This isn't about lust, it's about your health, your hormones, your heart, and the part of you that still wants to feel alive. Let's begin. Most men don't notice it when it happens. There's no dramatic event, no warning bell. It starts in the small moments. The morning feels just a bit duller. Movement loses ease, and the body responds a little slower to touch, to warmth, even to thought. One man, 6JD, told me he hadn't realized how long it had been until he stood in the shower and felt nothing. Not pain. Not pleasure. Just absence. And that's often how it begins. When the body no longer receives its quiet signals of stimulation, changes happen quickly. Circulation slows in the smallest blood vessels first. Without movement, oxygen delivery declines. Nerve sensitivity dulls. Within 6 months, the tissues that once responded without effort can begin to lose function. In men over 65, lack of stimulation can reduce localized blood flow by up to 28%. That means colder extremities, slower healing, and a loss of energy that most attribute to age, but isn't always. And yet, it's not about what you're doing. It's about what you've stopped doing. Men often think letting go of this part of life is noble, even expected, but your body doesn't interpret it that way. It simply sees withdrawal and begins to adapt. I once had a patient in his early 70s, sharp mind, strong hands, but tired. Always tired. He hadn't had any physical intimacy, not even with himself, in almost 4 years. Not by choice. He'd simply convinced himself that part of his life was over. What changed wasn't his desire, it was his belief. He told me, "It's like I turned the volume down on myself. When stimulation fades, the nervous system begins a subtle retreat. The connection between brain and body weakens. Small cues go unanswered. Warmth becomes neutral. Touch feels distant. For some men, this manifests as muscle tension. For others, it's insomnia. And for many, it shows up in their silence." If you're in your 60s or 70s and finding that energy isn't what it used to be, ask yourself, have I stopped connecting with myself, not just physically, but emotionally? Because the truth is, your body never stops asking to be acknowledged, even when you've stopped listening. And the good news, that connection can be reawakened quietly, gently, without shame. Let's continue. You can tell when a man's energy begins to fade, but it rarely starts in the muscles. It starts in the blood. Circulation is more than movement. It's communication. Every cell in your body depends on blood flow not just to survive, but to function. And for men past 60, this system is delicate. When stimulation stops any kind of touch, warmth, or arousal, the flow slows. The smallest vessels, especially those in the lower pelvis, begin to narrow. In men over 65 who disengage physically, microvascular flexibility drops by up to 23%. That means blood moves more slowly. Oxygen doesn't reach deep tissue as efficiently, and healing takes longer. One man came to me complaining of fatigue that no amount of rest could fix. He was active, ate well, but had stopped all forms of intimacy for over a year. He didn't think it mattered, but it did. His blood pressure was low normal, his hands were often cold, and his legs cramped at night. We didn't prescribe a pill, we started with circulation. The pelvic region isn't just about function. It's a central hub for cardiovascular tone. When regularly stimulated, even gently, this area activates nitric oxide pathways, opening vessels, relaxing tension, and redistributing flow to the brain, heart, and muscles. That's why some men in their 70s still seem to glow with vitality, while others fade quietly in their chairs. The link between energy and blood flow is not poetic, it's biological. Men who continue gentle self-engagement 1 to 2 times per week maintain higher resting energy levels, better temperature regulation, and sharper mental clarity. It's not about fantasy or indulgence, it's about fuel. I often ask my older patients a simple question when you wake up. Do you feel charged or are you already tired? Because if your body hasn't been circulating properly during rest, your morning will start half empty. This is where intimacy plays a role, not in isolation, but in rhythm. The body that's reminded it's still needed keeps showing up. If you've felt yourself slowing down, not just in movement, but in desire, ask quietly, is my body still trying to signal me through fatigue? Because the most powerful medicine your body may be asking for is attention. And when blood moves again, life tends to follow. Let's look deeper. There's a quiet shift that happens in a man's body after 70, not loud, not sudden, but certain. He may still walk well, eat well, even laugh easily. But something internal begins to drift. Focus fades, appetite dulls, sleep becomes lighter, and the spark that once powered action feels faint. This isn't just aging. Often, it's the whisper of hormones stepping back after being ignored. By their early 70s, most men experience a 1-2% yearly drop in testosterone, but when there's no stimulation, no gentle signal to the brain that intimacy still matters, the decline accelerates. The message the body receives is, you're no longer needed, and so, the system winds down. But here's the surprise, reintroducing even mild, non-performative physical connection can slow that hormonal retreat. Dopamine, oxytocin, luteinizing hormone, they all respond to intention, not perfection. One of my patients, 73, had quietly let this part of himself fade. He told me he didn't feel low, he just didn't feel much at all. When he began to re-engage through gentle stimulation and breathwork, his mood lifted within 3 weeks. He started walking more. He began calling friends again. Not because someone told him to, but because something in him had come back online. Hormones are not isolated. They influence everything: digestion, memory, blood sugar, blood pressure, even the color in your face. When testosterone falls too fast, men often lose muscle tone, balance, and emotional stability. And many don't connect these changes to something so private, but they should. Even once or twice a week, gentle engagement without pressure or goal can raise circulating testosterone by 11 to 16% in older men. Not to turn back the clock, but to help it tick steadily. The brain, too, begins to respond. It's not just about feeling younger. It's about remembering who you are. So I ask you, have you stopped listening to your body's subtle call? Or have you convinced yourself those whispers were meant to be ignored? Because after 70, your hormones don't shout, they whisper, and if you pay attention, they still respond. Let's continue, A man came to me not long ago, 76 years old, complaining of a dull pressure that never quite went away. He thought it was his bladder. He was waking up 3, sometimes 4 times a night. There was no pain, but something didn't feel right. He described it as a quiet weight, something that followed him into his mornings and settled in his lower back. What we found wasn't infection, it was congestion, and it had been building for months. The prostate doesn't just sit there, it stores and releases. When that release doesn't happen regularly, the fluid thickens. In men past 70, the rate of prostatic stagnation nearly doubles after 90 days of inactivity. Inflammation follows. That's when the symptoms begin: interrupted flow, pelvic tension, and the kind of fatigue that isn't just tired, it's edged with irritability. Many older men confuse this with urinary problems, and while the bladder may feel involved, the source often lies just beneath it. I've seen men begin medication regimens, even schedule surgeries, when what they needed was simply a return to the body's natural rhythm, a rhythm they'd quietly let go of, thinking it no longer mattered. Chronic inflammation of the prostate can raise long-term health risks. Studies show that men over 70 with prolonged inactivity in this region face a 37% greater chance of persistent discomfort or swelling. But more than the numbers, there's the lived reality: the man who can't sit comfortably through dinner, who hesitates before long drives, who avoids intimacy not from lack of interest, but from quiet discomfort. This isn't about indulgence. It's about relief, about hygiene, about dignity. And sometimes, the first sign isn't physical at all. It's emotional. A shorter temper, a sense of frustration without cause, a subtle pulling away from others. When the body holds pressure too long, the mind feels it too. So if you're noticing more nighttime trips, a lingering ache, or the feeling that something's off down there, even without pains, ask yourself, could this be my body's way of asking for attention, not treatment? The good news is that the system responds quickly. A consistent, respectful practice of release, even just once a week, can reduce pelvic tension, improve sleep, and soften that hidden weight. The goal isn't return, it's release. Let's move forward. He said his nights felt long, not restless, just hollow. He'd lie in bed at 10, still awake at 1, listening to the refrigerator hum and the wind move the blinds. I'm not worried, he told me. I'm just untired. But that kind of untired is a warning, especially after 70. Men often assume poor sleep is just part of aging. But what many don't realize is how deeply sleep is tied to hormonal rhythm. Not just testosterone, but oxytocin, dopamine, melatonin. When you engage in even modest intimacy, especially before bed, those hormones rise and interact. They relax the nervous system, quiet the limbic brain, help your body shift from alert to rest. In older adults who maintain gentle physical connection at least once a week, nighttime cortisol levels drop by up to 22%, while melatonin rises more predictably. That balance is what brings sleep, not sedation, but true rest. And without it, even 8 hours in bed leaves the body feeling unrestored. There's also the matter of temperature. The drop in core body heat that signals the brain to initiate sleep is influenced by oxytocin. When intimacy fades, that thermal response dulls. That's why many older men lie awake feeling wide-eyed, despite fatigue. The signal chain has been disrupted. One of my patients, 71 had been waking 3 to 4 times a night for years. He tried teas, dark curtains, no screens, nothing worked. But when we restored a gentle evening ritual, not even full engagement, just warmth, touch, breath, his sleep changed within 10 nights. He said, "It's like my body remembered how to shut off." It's not about routine, it's about rhythm. The endocrine system responds best when it knows it's still part of your life. And this matters beyond sleep. Men who experience consistent disruption in hormone-driven rest patterns are at higher risk for cognitive decline, balance loss, even blood pressure instability. These aren't distant problems. They're tomorrow's reality, shaped by tonight's rhythm. So ask yourself, is my sleep shallow because my system has stopped receiving the signals that tell it I'm safe, I'm connected? The answer, often, isn't found in a pill or a sleep aid. It's found in remembering that the body doesn't ask for perfection, it just asks not to be forgotten. Let's keep going. Sometimes the first person to notice isn't the man, it's the woman sitting across the table. She sees the pause where there used to be a smile, the shrug that replaces conversation. She watches him sit longer, speak less, wander the house like a man not lost, but unanchored. One woman in her early 60s told me her husband had slowly gone quiet. He still loved her. She knew that. But he didn't reach for her anymore. Not with his hands, not with his eyes. "He's still here," she said, "but it's like he's behind glass." She thought it might be grief or aging. But what she was witnessing was the quiet disconnection of a man who had stopped engaging with himself. It starts small. He stops initiating affection, stops grooming with the same care. He sleeps more, but wakes up tired. She offers touch. He pulls away, not out of rejection, but because his own body no longer feels like it belongs to him. And it affects them both. When a man's physical connection to himself fades, it sends ripples through his relationships. Emotional presence narrows. Sensory responses dull. And the very hormones that fuel empathy and connection, oxytocin, dopamine, begin to wither from disuse. Men over 70 who disengage physically are more likely to report low mood, while their partners describe feeling unseen or less wanted. But it's not about rejection. It's about rhythm and the absence of it. I've heard daughters voice it too. Dad doesn't laugh the same. He just stares out the window now. Often, what they're sensing isn't depression, it's disconnection. And it doesn't always come from loss. Sometimes it comes from silence, the kind where a man quietly decides that part of his life is over and begins to disappear. But here's what's most important. It's not irreversible. Hormones can be stimulated gently. Presence can be relearned. And the reconnection doesn't begin in the bedroom, it begins in the mirror. So ask yourself, has someone close to me noticed something I've ignored? Am I withdrawing without meaning to? Because the people who love you may feel the distance before you do. And often, what they miss most, what you may miss most, is not touch itself, but who you are when you still believe you're worth reaching for. Let's continue. It usually starts around 9 p.m. A quiet craving sneaks in. You're not really hungry. Dinner was fine, but you find yourself opening the cabinet anyway, looking for something sweet. Just a little. A cookie, a piece of toast with jam, a glass of warm milk laced with sugar. For men and women in their 60s and 70s. This is more than habit. It's a hormone signal. Misfiring. When the body stops receiving cues from physical intimacy, even gentle ones, hormonal stability begins to slip, testosterone declines, dopamine dips, and cortisol. The stress hormone starts creeping upward in the evening. This imbalance disrupts insulin sensitivity. The body begins to store sugar instead of using it. That's when glucose spikes at night, leading to restless sleep, grogginess at dawn, and sudden cravings that seem emotional but are rooted in physiology. In older adults who remain physically disengaged, insulin resistance increases by 14 or 18% within 6 months. That may not seem like much until you realize that small shift can push borderline glucose levels into the danger zone. And the cravings. They're your body's attempt to chase comfort when the endocrine system is out of sync. One woman, 72, widowed for 5 years, came to me complaining of constant nighttime snacking. "I don't even want it," she said, "but I feel hollow if I don't." She hadn't touched her body in years. She thought that chapter had closed, but it hadn't. It was just unvisited. We started slowly, a warm compress before bed, hand over heart, a nightly ritual of connection, not consumption. Within 4 weeks, her cravings eased. Her fasting glucose stabilized. She smiled when she said, "I sleep now with a full body, not a full stomach." This applies to men, too. The drop in testosterone isn't just about strength, it affects how your cells use fuel. And when your body can't read insulin properly, it tells your brain eat more, especially sugar. But the solution isn't deprivation, it's rhythm. So ask yourself, are my late night cravings really hunger? Or is my system looking for something I stopped giving it? You don't need to overhaul your diet. You need to remind your body what safety feels like. A breath, a gentle touch, a return to the endocrine cues it was built to follow. From here, we step into another rhythm, how these hormones quietly shape the bones, moods, and connections of the women around us. Let's keep going. He thought she had lost interest, but the truth was, her body had changed, and no one told her how deeply that change would echo. After menopause, estrogen doesn't just decline quietly. It drops like a curtain, altering blood flow, reducing natural moisture, and subtly weakening the very architecture of her bones. One woman in her late 60s said it best, "I didn't feel broken. I just didn't feel invited to myself." She hadn't been touched in years, not even by her own hands. It wasn't shame, it was fatigue. And that fatigue had found its way into her hips, her sleep, her silence. But here's what's often missed: physical connection, even alone, sends signals that extend far beyond intimacy. In postmenopausal women who engage in gentle self-stimulation, pelvic circulation increases significantly by as much as 27%. That blood flow supports tissue health, encourages calcium absorption, and stimulates neural activity in regions tied to emotional balance. Add in movement, simple walking, light pressure exercises, and the benefits expand. Women over 70 who combine physical touch with vitamin D and resistance training show up to 29% better bone density than their inactive peers. This isn't a miracle, it's mechanics. The body remembers how to build if it's reminded. There's also an emotional element we can't ignore. When a woman feels disconnected from her body, she often disconnects from those around her. It's not about romance, it's about identity. One widow told me, "After I stopped touching myself, I started avoiding mirrors." That quiet statement carried years of truth. So many women believe that era of their life is over when in reality, their body is waiting for them to return. Slowly, kindly, not with performance, but with presence. If you're a woman in your 60s or 70s and you've noticed more stiffness in your joints, more dryness, or a sense of emotional flatness, ask this without judgment. Have I stopped reaching for myself, not just with my hands, but with permission? Your bones don't just need calcium. They need blood. They need hormonal signals. They need you. And the act of reconnecting doesn't require anyone else, just a quiet decision to come back. Let's move gently into the next chapter. She came in with him, holding his pill organizer in one hand and his coat in the other. He was 78, quiet, polite, and distant in the way many older men become not rude, just unreachable. He said he was fine, but she leaned in as he stepped away and whispered, "He's not really here anymore." What she meant wasn't memory loss. His cognition was still sharp. But the man she remembered, the one who fixed things, cracked jokes, warmed a room he wasn't coming through. She'd started noticing the little things: longer naps, skipped shaves, fewer phone calls returned. He'd stopped listening to music, stopped watching the news, stopped reacting. When we spoke alone, he confessed he hadn't engaged with his own body, not even in the smallest way, in over 3 years. Since his wife died, he'd shut that door. It felt disrespectful, he told me. But what it really felt like, over time, was emptiness. That part of him, the one that remembered warmth, breath, connection, had quietly gone dark. This isn't rare. Disconnection doesn't always announce itself with depression or dramatic change. Often, it arrives like dust. A man becomes neutral, functional, predictable, but not present. And those who love him, daughters, partners, even neighbors, feel the absence before he does. We started simple, a bedtime routine, a warm compress on the abdomen, a short walk after dinner with his daughter where she held his arm. She said he smiled more within a week. After a month, he began fixing small things around the house again. And one afternoon, unprompted, he said, "I feel like something opened in me. Just a little." The body doesn't need permission to begin healing. It only needs attention. And sometimes, it's not the man who sees it first. It's the woman who grew up watching him, still trying to reach the version of him that laughed with his whole chest. So if someone close to you has mentioned you seem tired, different, less there, don't brush it off. Ask yourself, what have I stopped giving myself that once made me feel like me? Because those quiet changes aren't nothing. They're the echo of disconnection, and they're reversible if you're willing to return. Let's meet the man who did just that at 80. He sat across from me with a quiet dignity, 80 years old, hands calloused from a lifetime of work, eyes that had seen war and weddings, and a voice that still carried the weight of command, even though it trembled now and then. "Doc," he said, "I don't want to be younger. I just want to feel something again." He wasn't sick, not in the way charts define illness, but he hadn't felt connected to his own body in years. His wife had passed 6 winters ago. Since then, he told me, his evenings had become hollow meals alone, long nights, a television he let talk at him while he sat motionless in the dark. He hadn't touched himself in nearly a decade. He didn't think it was appropriate. He thought that part of a man should fade. But the body doesn't believe in fading, it only believes in feedback. We began with a ritual. Each morning, before tea, he'd sit with his hand on his chest. No goals, no pressure, just breath, connection, a remembering. Within a few weeks, he added light stretching, then warm oil over his abdomen before bed, then, eventually, the courage to reintroduce touch not out of performance, but out of presence. At his next visit, he told me something simple and stunning. I don't feel young, but I feel like I'm here again. His blood pressure had stabilized, his sleep had deepened, his appetite had returned not just for food, but for life. He even started calling his granddaughter more often, asking about her day, offering advice she hadn't asked for but clearly needed. Men in their 80s are not past connection. In fact, they often need it more, not for the sake of memory, but for meaning. And it doesn't begin with someone else. It begins with the decision to listen to the body again, to reconnect gently to the quiet places that still long to be felt. So if you're nearing 80 or well past it, and you've convinced yourself that warmth is for other people, I'll ask you this. What if your body is waiting not for youth, but for your return? There's still time. There's always time. Let's bring this home. If any part of this made you pause even for a moment, hold that. Not with judgment, just with gentleness. The older we get, the easier it becomes to set parts of ourselves aside, to tell our bodies they've served their purpose, to fall silent in places that once made us feel most alive. But you're not done. Your body still listens, your mind still responds, and the part of you that once felt warmth, confidence, tenderness, it's not gone. It's waiting, not for performance, just for permission. And the moment you give yourself that quietly, kindly you begin to return. You don't need to become someone you used to be. You just need to remember that you still belong to yourself, still worthy of care, still capable of feeling, giving, receiving without apology. If this made you reflect today, let someone else feel that too. Share it. And when you're ready, join me in the next conversation, What Women Prefer in Connection After 60. You may find that their needs and yours were never all that different. We'll talk soon.